3 a.m. Los Angeles. The city is silent, but the harbor district is seconds from ignition. A steel ram hits the first door. Flashlights carve through the dark. Agents move in tight formation, no wasted motion. SWAT vans lock down intersections. Helicopters drift above the cranes like silent shadows. 80 targets. 80 addresses. One synchronized hit. For a split second, everything freezes. Then the raid ignites 1,300 federal, state, and local officers moving as one. Doors open. Commands drop. Suspects freeze under the lights. Fast. Clean. Surgical. The kind of operation that takes years to build and seconds to break open. But this moment, this explosion of force, isn't where the story begins. It's where it ends. The real beginning? A small anomaly inside the harbor. 3 years earlier, San Pedro, gateway to the port of Los Angeles. Steel towers, cargo lanes, endless noise. And somewhere inside that noise, a whisper. A confidential tip. High-powered rifles are moving through the harbor. Not handguns. Not street weapons. Rifles linked to cartel shootouts across the border. Investigators checked. Surveillance teams followed. And the behavior didn't match any local gang. It was too organized. Too consistent. Too polished. This wasn't a corner crew. This was an enterprise. Gun routes. Cash lanes. Dope runs. All running like a hidden supply chain. HSI called in backup. FBI, ATF, LAPD, gang units. All staring at the same names, the same routes, the same problem. And one question cut through the room. How long has this network been growing right under us? The answer would take 3 years to uncover. The takedown at 3 a.m. was just the impact. The final snap after years of pressure tightening around a hidden empire. San Pedro wasn't just a port. It was a grid, steel corridors, storage yards, blind corners carved between towers of cargo. A place built for flow, and perfect for hiding it. The first hint surfaced quietly. A single report that didn't fit the rhythm of normal harbor traffic. A shipment logged clean on paper. But its weight didn't match its manifest. Then another anomaly. And another. Different days. Different docks. Same rhythm. Someone was using the port like a funnel. HSI analysts traced the irregularities. Patterns repeating with unnatural precision. Pickups happening seconds too early. Drops happening minutes too late. Not mistakes. Not noise. Intent. What looked like routine cargo motion began to reveal a second layer. A shadow circuit running beneath legitimate trade. That's when the agencies converged. FBI brought gang intelligence. ATF traced weapons that kept surfacing in distant crime scenes. LAPD supplied the street-level nuance no federal system could capture. The puzzle pieces finally sat on one table. Names. Vehicles. Storage units. A web taking shape, thin at first, then tightening. For the first time, the pattern started to glow. Financial spikes. Phone pings. Cross-harbor stops that lined up a little too clean. And a framework began to emerge. Methodical, disciplined, built to avoid detection. But the most alarming discovery wasn't the guns moving south, or the cash moving north. It was the product moving sideways. Meth, heroin, fentanyl. Not scattered sales. Wholesale flow. And the deeper they dug, the clearer the source became. DEA labs confirmed the purity. Federal prosecutors saw the scope. This wasn't smuggling for profit. This was distribution at scale. A network with supply lines, hierarchy, and rules. And buried under all the data, one question pressed harder than the rest. If this group could turn a major U.S. port into their personal pipeline, what else had they learned to imitate? The task force didn't have the answer. Not yet. But they knew one thing. Whatever they were chasing wasn't operating like a gang. It was operating like an organization. The deeper the task force pushed, the less the operation looked like street crime. And the more it resembled infrastructure. Patterns tightened. Routes aligned. Movements synced like gears inside a machine. Agents started noticing the behavior behind the logistics. Meetings arranged through rotating phones. Vehicles swapped before every handoff. Storage units rented under synthetic identities that vanished after one use. No gang operates with discipline like that. Nothing random. Nothing sloppy. Whoever built this system understood pressure and how to move beneath it. Financial analysts uncovered the second layer. Cash cycling through the same clusters of businesses, accounts activating briefly, then going dark, a money pulse too steady for small-time operations. Follow the cash. Follow the structure. Evidence units trace the firearms. Same buyer ring. Same retailers. Same modification marks. Like someone upstream was supplying inventory, not chaos. Drug labs confirmed a similar signature. Meth and heroin from seizures miles apart carried nearly identical chemistry. Same cook, same source, same pipeline. The puzzle was no longer about individual crimes. It was about architecture. And inside that architecture, ranks emerged. Decision-makers never appearing in surveillance. Coordinators who handled logistics but never touched product. Runners who only moved what they were told and never asked who gave the order. A hierarchy hidden inside routine circulation. By late 2019, the scope was undeniable. Prosecutors began shaping something rare. A federal case built big enough for RICO. Every charge needed precision. Every thread had to connect. Every allegation had to survive the courtroom years after the raid. Grand juries reviewed the evidence behind sealed doors. No leaks. No slips. When the signatures landed, the air shifted inside the task force. 3 years of surveillance, infiltration, and pattern mapping had narrowed to one outcome. The network wasn't just visible. It was boxed in. How long had this been happening in plain sight? And soon, 80 addresses across San Pedro would learn that their timeline had already expired. When the indictments were finally sealed, the investigation crossed a line. The quiet work was over. Now every move had to be controlled, timed, and airtight. The task force relocated into a restricted wing of the federal building. No phones. No unsecured laptops, no names spoken louder than necessary. For the first time in 3 years, all agencies sat inside one locked room, looking at a single map of San Pedro that stretched wall to wall. 80 targets, each marked with a different threat rating, each paired with every known routine, every address, every vehicle, every associate. What followed wasn't drama. It was architecture. Entry teams rehearsed floor plans again and again. Which doors reinforced? Which hallways narrow? Which apartments had multiple exits? Which suspects had a history of running? Aviation plotted helicopter routes in the dark, checking angles, wind patterns, and blind spots along the cranes. Marshals secured transport corridors. Local units mapped fallback streets if things shifted seconds before entry. Every scenario had a counter-scenario. Every assumption had a backup. Nothing could rely on luck. By the last night before the takedown, the board looked less like an investigation and more like an operating system. Green markers for primary teams, yellow for support, red for high-risk targets with unpredictable behavior. Updates flickered through the room. Phone pings, shifting positions, vehicles appearing in unexpected lots, suspects sending short bursts of late-night messages. Patterns that had been stable for months suddenly twitched. It wasn't panic. It was a reminder. An operation this large didn't sit still, but it was too late for them to adjust. The feds had already sealed the timeline. There was no second version of this plan. When the final briefing ended, the room went silent. Not from fear, but from the weight of precision. One dawn. One shot. 80 coordinated entries. 3 years of work distilled into a single timestamp. 5 a.m. First light. Impact window locked. Everything after that moment would unfold in seconds, and there would be no opportunity to pull anything back. 5 a.m. sharp. The plan stops being theory and becomes movement. Engines hum in the dark across San Pedro. Unmarked cars. Armored carriers. Convoy units lined tight along residential blocks. Above them, helicopters drift in blackout mode. Rotors barely audible, holding position between cranes and rooftop edges. Every team listens to the same voice in their headset. Stand by. Synchronize. On my command. 10 seconds. 5. 1. Execute. What hits the Harbor District next isn't noise. It's coordination. Teams push forward in perfect sequence. Doors open fast, slamming against hinges. Agents sweep rooms with crisp, rehearsed flows. Commands stay short. Measured. Controlled. Most suspects freeze the moment silhouettes fill their doorway. A few move, stop, realize the streets outside are already sealed. Reports roll in like clockwork. Target detained. Structure secured. Secondary clear. No panic. No hesitation. Just the rhythm of a plan landing exactly where it was designed to land. Evidence teams move in behind the arrest units. They work quietly, methodically, documenting rooms, pulling data from phones, marking cash bundles, stack lists, logistics notes, hidden inside drawers and false panels. Not surprises, confirmations. The pieces the task force saw on screens now sit on tables in real time. As sunrise creeps over the port, transport vans begin filling. Handcuffed suspects line the benches silent, stunned, each one realizing the same truth. This wasn't luck. They were surrounded long before the first door opened. By 6:12-M, the final message crackles through the command channel. All 80 secured. No officer injuries. All locations contained. No cheering. No celebration. Just a long exhale across a room that hasn't slept in days. Because takedowns end fast. But the vacuum they leave behind never stays empty for long. And that question hangs in the air, heavy and unresolved. What moves next into the space an empire just vacated? By noon, the microphones are already lined up. Federal SEALs hang behind the podium. HSI, FBI, ATF, LAPD, agencies that rarely stand shoulder to shoulder, now sharing the same frame. The room settles. Cameras lock in. And the numbers finally go public. 80 arrests. 230 defendants. The largest coordinated gang takedown in Los Angeles history. Charts appear behind the officials. Arrows, runs, cash flows, coded communication lines, stretching from San Pedro to cities far beyond the border. This isn't a neighborhood story anymore. It's a blueprint of how transnational networks hide inside American ports. Quiet, persistent, almost invisible. Until the morning they're not. Reporters ask the question everyone expects. How did an operation this large stay hidden for so long? The answer is simple. Because it had to. A system this layered can only collapse when every piece is watched, measured, and pulled at the same second. Harbor Storm did exactly that. In the following weeks, arraignments fill federal courtrooms. Some defendants fold early. Others wait, hoping the evidence is thinner than it looks. But the case files don't bend. 3 years of monitoring, tracing, mapping, a record dense enough to stand on its own. Outside the courtroom, San Pedro shifts in smaller, quieter ways. Kids walk home without speeding cars shadowing the curb. Storefronts keep their lights on past sunset. Patrol units circle the harbor with purpose, not fear. But every takedown creates movement, and movement creates uncertainty. Ports don't stay empty. Power doesn't stay vacant. So federal teams stay in rotation, tracking new chatter, strengthening port security, supporting outreach groups that try to break the cycle before another chain grows in the cracks. Because dismantling an empire is only the first step. Keeping the silence that follows from turning into something darker is the real battle. And as one agent said, quietly, off camera, after the press conference lights faded, takedowns are moments. But stability, that takes years.